Absolutely. So in this account, they talk about how they had a pretty, significant decrease in their anxiety after they started adding kefir to their daily routine. But what really stood out to me was like this ripple effect.
Yeah.
They described like better sleep, more energy, even like changes in their workout performance.
Wow.
I know, crazy, right? So before we get into all those specifics, can we just like take a step back to the basics? What exactly is kefir and why might it even have like any of these effects?
So kefir is basically a fermented milk drink. It's kind of like a tangy, drinkable yogurt, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And it's absolutely packed with probiotics, which are those live microorganisms, primarily bacteria and yeast that we hear so much about. And those offer a host of health benefits.
Got it.
And one of the key areas where these probiotics may have their biggest influence is in the gut.
Right, the gut, which it's more than just digestion, right? 'Cause
Absolutely.
like this account mentioned the gut-brain connection, which honestly sounded a little out there to me at first.
Yeah, I can see that.
So is that a real thing, or is it just like one of those trendy health buzzwords?
It's definitely a real thing, and actually it's an area research is really exploding right now.
Mm.
The gut and the brain are constantly talking to each other, and the trillions of bacteria living in our gut, which we call the gut microbiome, that plays a surprisingly significant role.
Okay.
You can kind of think of it as like a vast ecosystem living within us, influencing everything from our mood and stress responses to our immune system,
Wow.
and even how our genes express themselves.
So how might kefir with, its army of probiotics fit into this whole gut-brain communication system?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Some researchers think that certain probiotics, particularly the strains that we find in kefir, can influence the production of neurotransmitters like serotonin.
Oh.
And, serotonin, that plays a crucial role in regulating mood, sleep, and even appetite.
Wait, so 90% of our serotonin is actually produced in the gut? I remember reading that in the account and thinking, wait, what? Like, that can't be right.
It's true. It's one of those facts that I think really highlights just how interconnected our bodies really are. We tend to think of the brain as like, the command center for everything.
Yeah.
But it turns out the gut has a lot more say than we previously thought,
Mm-hmm.
which also means that what we consume can directly impact our mental and emotional well-being.
So, like, theoretically, could adding kefir to our diet help shift the balance of bacteria in our gut in a way that leads to more serotonin production?
Yeah.
And therefore a calmer, happier us?
That's the hypothesis that some researchers are exploring right now.
Mm-hmm.
And while we definitely need more research, early studies have shown some promising results.
Like what?
Well, for example, one study that was published in the journal Frontiers in Psychiatry found that certain probiotic strains, including some that are commonly found in kefir,
Mm-hmm.
those can actually reduce anxiety-like behaviors in animals.
Mm.
This research suggests that kefir could potentially be a valuable tool in managing anxiety,
Yeah.
particularly for individuals who experience those mild to moderate symptoms.
Now, you mentioned certain strains of probiotics. Is there something special about the ones in kefir?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kefir is pretty unique because it contains a wide range of probiotic strains, including lactobacillus and bifidobacterium species, which are known for their mental health benefits.
Oh.
It also contains yeasts, which are less common in other fermented dairy products.
Huh.
So this unique combination of all those microorganisms is what might give kefir its edge when it comes to promoting mental well-being.
Okay, so that all makes sense, but let's be real for a second.
Sure.
This is just one person's experience. We can't like draw huge conclusions based on just that one person.
Right.
I'm a pretty skeptical person, and I'm sure our listeners are too. So what would you say to someone who's listening right now and rolling their eyes thinking, come on, kefir isn't some miracle cure?
I completely get that skepticism. And you're right, just one anecdote is not scientific proof.
Sure.
What's interesting here, though, is that this individual's experience actually does align with some of the emerging research on the gut-brain connection and the potential benefits of probiotics.
Mm-hmm.
For example, a recent review that was published in the journal General Psychiatry analyzed data from a ton of studies and found that probiotic supplementation, which includes kefir, was associated with reduced symptoms of anxiety and depression.
Mm.
Now, these findings are definitely still preliminary, and we need more research to figure out things like the optimal dosage, the duration, and the specific strains of probiotics for different people.
Right.
But it's certainly a very exciting area of exploration.
I'll admit you've got me intrigued, and it sounds like there's a lot more to this story than just anxiety relief. This listener describes some pretty impressive physical benefits after adding kefir to their routine. Should we dive into those next?
Absolutely. Let's explore how this simple fermented drink might be impacting more than just our mental state.
Let's do it.
Welcome back. So we've talked about how the gut can really affect our mental well-being and how kefir might be a big part of, promoting a healthy, balanced gut environment. But what about those physical benefits our listener was talking about? Remember, they said they felt stronger and had more endurance during their workouts.
Yeah. It almost sounds too good to be true.
Right.
I mean, I'm all for a natural performance enhancer, but is there any science behind that, or are we just like hoping that's true?
Well, it's definitely an area where we need to do more research. But there's some pretty interesting things that suggest there might be a connection. Remember those probiotics we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, they don't just affect the gut-brain connection. They can also impact our metabolism and energy production.
Okay, hold on. I need you to break that down for me. How could bacteria in my gut affect how my muscles perform?
Well, one way is through nutrient absorption. The gut microbiome is really important for breaking down and absorbing the nutrients from our food. And when our gut bacteria are doing well, we're better able to get those essential vitamins and minerals and amino acids that our muscles need.
So basically, a healthy gut microbiome helps our muscles function at their best.
Exactly. It's like having this team of tiny little nutritionists working 24/7 to make sure our bodies are getting the fuel they need.
I love that. And it's not just about absorbing nutrients, right?
Right? Some studies are showing that certain gut bacteria can actually make energy production in our cells more efficient.
Oh, wow.
So that means that our muscles might be able to work harder and longer with the same amount of fuel.
Okay, then why isn't everyone talking about this? Why isn't every athlete drinking kefir before they work out?
Well, remember, this is still a pretty new area of research.
Hmm.
We need more studies, especially in humans, to back up these findings and figure out the best doses and types of probiotics for athletic performance. But the potential is definitely there, and researchers are really interested in it.
So maybe kefir isn't a magic potion yet, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
For sure.
But let's change gears a bit.
Okay.
Our listener also said they were sleeping a lot better after they started having kefir. Is there a connection between our gut health and how well we sleep?
Absolutely. Remember serotonin.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just for mood. It's also needed to make melatonin, which is the hormone that controls our sleep-wake cycle.
So by maybe increasing serotonin in the gut, kefir could be helping our bodies make more melatonin, which would lead to better sleep.
Exactly. And there's actually research that supports that idea. A study in the journal Sleep found that people with insomnia had less diverse gut microbiomes compared to people who slept well.
Hmm.
So that suggests that a good balance of bacteria in our gut is important for good sleep. And kefir, with all its different types of probiotics, could be a big help in getting that diversity.
It's like kefir is this multitasking superhero, fighting anxiety, improving workouts, and even helping us sleep better. Is there anything this drink can't do?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's important to remember that kefir isn't a cure-all. While it has some exciting potential benefits, it's just one part of being healthy. But it's definitely a part that we should pay attention to. And in our listener's story, they also mentioned something else that I found really interesting. They talked about their sugar cravings.
Oh, yeah. They said they were struggling with sugar addiction and that kefir seemed to help them with those cravings. That's something I think a lot of people can relate to. I know I've definitely had my own battles with sugar.
Oh, I think we all have.
Yeah.
And that part of the listener's experience is really connected to the gut-brain connection. Research is showing that the types of bacteria in our gut can actually make us crave certain foods.
Wait, really? The bacteria are making us want to eat certain things?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense if you think about it. All those trillions of bacteria need to eat too, and they have their preferences.
Mm-hmm.
Some bacteria love sugar, and others prefer fiber. And the more we feed the sugar-loving bacteria, the more of them there are, and the stronger their influence becomes.
So it's like this bad cycle. We eat more sugar, our gut microbiome gets more of those sugar-craving bacteria, and then we crave even more sugar.
Exactly. And that's where kefir might help break that cycle. By bringing in lots of different good bacteria, kefir can help rebalance the gut microbiome, and that might reduce how many of those sugar-craving microbes we have.
So kefir isn't blocking sugar receptors or anything. It's more about fixing the imbalance in our gut that's causing those cravings.
That's a great way to put it. And it shows how important it is to think about the whole picture when we're trying to deal with sugar cravings. It's not just about willpower. It's also about giving our gut microbiome the right things to help the good bacteria grow.
This is so interesting, but I have to admit, my skeptical side is still wondering if we're giving kefir too much credit. Could it really be that powerful?
Well, remember, we're only looking at one person's experience. We need more research to know for sure and to really understand how it all works. But this story does bring up some really cool questions about how kefir could help us have a healthier gut microbiome and improve our overall health.
You're right. It's definitely a good place to start. And speaking of starting, remember how our listener mentioned drinking kefir with bone broth for extra gut healing?
Yes.
I'm curious about that too. What's so special about bone broth, and why might it be a good thing to have with kefir?
That's a great question. It brings us to another fascinating part of gut health. Bone broth has been used in traditional cultures for ages, and it's become really popular lately as a superfood for gut healing.
Hmm.
And there's actually some science behind that. Bone broth is full of collagen, gelatin, and amino acids like glutamine, which can all help soothe and repair the lining of our gut.
So it's like bone broth is giving our gut the materials it needs to build a strong and healthy lining.
Exactly. It's like giving your gut a nice warm hug. And when you combine that with the probiotics from kefir, you're creating a power couple for gut health. The bone broth helps to repair the gut lining, and the kefir brings in all those good bacteria to live in that healthy environment.
I love that. And it makes sense, especially for someone who's dealing with things like acid reflux, which our listener said they found relief from.
Exactly. Acid reflux is often a sign that the gut lining is irritated or damaged. So by helping the gut lining with bone broth and adding good bacteria with kefir, you're helping create a more balanced and healthy gut environment, and that could reduce those uncomfortable reflux episodes.
Wow, it's amazing how much we've learned just from listening to one person's experience. It's like we've uncovered this whole hidden world of gut health.
It is incredible, and it really shows how connected everything in our bodies is, and how something as simple as what we eat can have such a big impact on our health.
And while we're not saying that kefir is a miracle cure, it's definitely something that deserves a place at the table, literally and figuratively, when we're talking about being healthy. But before we get too carried away with the kefir and bone broth, I think we should take a step back and think about the bigger picture.
I agree. Let's talk about what this all means for our listeners who are ready to start their own gut healing journey.
So we've explored the science, we've heard that amazing personal story, and now I bet our listeners are thinking, oh, okay, I'm interested, but where do I even start?
That's a great question, and I think the first thing to remember is that taking care of your gut doesn't have to mean like a total diet makeover or a super restrictive lifestyle.
Right.
It's really about making small changes over time that support your gut microbiome.
So I don't have to like become a hermit and just drink kefir and bone broth all day.
Exactly. You can start by just adding kefir into your diet in a way that works for you and that you enjoy. You can find it at most grocery stores now, usually near the yogurt. Look for plain, unsweetened kefir. That's the best option for your gut.
Okay, and what about those of us who are feeling adventurous? I've heard you can actually make kefir at home. Is that worth trying?
Definitely. Making your own kefir gives you control over what goes into it and how long it ferments. Plus, it can be kind of a fun project. You can find kefir grains online or at some health food stores, and it's surprisingly easy to make. There are tons of resources and tutorials online if you need some help.
So let's say our listener has their kefir ready to go, whether it's store-bought or homemade. What's the best way to start incorporating it into their day?
Start small, maybe with a quarter or a half cup a day, and slowly increase the amount as you get used to it. Some people like to drink it straight, but you can also mix it into smoothies or oatmeal or even savory dishes if you want.
Ooh, I'm picturing a kefir smoothie bowl with fresh berries and granola and a little drizzle of honey. That sounds amazing.
That does sound good. And if plain kefir is a little too tangy for you, you can always add some fruit honey or even a splash of vanilla to make it taste better.
And we can't forget about bone broth. How can our listeners add that to their routine?
Bone broth is so versatile. You can have it as a warm drink on its own, or use it as a base for soups, stews, sauces, even risotto. It adds so much flavor and nutrients to anything you make.
So we're talking about making changes that will last, not just quick fixes. What else can people do for their gut health in the long run?
One of the most important things is to eat lots of different whole foods, especially ones that are high in fiber.
Okay.
Fiber is like food for our good gut bacteria. It helps them grow and thrive. So eat plenty of fruits, veggies, whole grains, legumes, and nuts.
And I'm guessing that means things like processed foods, sugary drinks, and too much unhealthy fat are not good for the gut.
Yeah, those kinds of foods can really throw off the balance in our gut microbiome. They feed the bad bacteria and can cause inflammation. So while it's fine to have them, sometimes it's best to make whole foods the main part of your diet.
Makes sense. So diet is super important. What about other things in our lifestyle? Do things like stress and sleep affect our gut health?
For sure. When we're stressed all the time, It can mess with our gut microbiome and lead to imbalances and inflammation.
Oh, wow.
So finding healthy ways to manage stress like exercise, meditation, or spending time in nature
Hmm.
is really important for a healthy gut.
And what about sleep? We talked about how kefir might help us sleep better, but can not getting enough sleep actually hurt our gut?
It goes both ways. Just like our gut health can affect our sleep, not getting enough sleep can disrupt our gut microbiome and make us more prone to digestive problems and other health issues. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of good sleep every night to keep both your gut and your whole body happy.
This is all such great advice, but I think it's important to remember that everyone's gut is different. What works for one person might not work for another.
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. The key is to really listen to your body, pay attention to how different foods and lifestyle choices make you feel, and then adjust as needed.
And if someone is having ongoing gut problems or feeling lost in all of this, it's always a good idea to talk to a healthcare professional, right?
Yes, definitely. Registered dietitians, functional medicine practitioners, and gastroenterologists can give you personalized help and support to figure out what's best for your gut. Don't be afraid to reach out for help.
Wow, this deep dive has been so enlightening. We started with one person's experience with kefir, and now we've explored this whole amazing world of the gut microbiome and how much it affects our health.
It's incredible how one story can open up so many different ideas and conversations.
It really is. And even though there's still so much we don't know about the gut, it's clear that it plays a huge role in how we feel overall.
Absolutely. And taking steps to keep our gut healthy can have amazing benefits for both our physical and mental health.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for being here with me on this deep dive. I've learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners have too.
It's been my pleasure.
All right.
And remember, your gut is your garden. Take good care of it, and it will flourish.
I love that. And on that note, we'll leave our listeners to tend to their own gut gardens. Happy healing, everyone.